I'm Eric Novak, and coming up, these are 10 things to know about the 2020 Kia Soul EV. The 2020 Kia Soul EV is the second generation of the electrified version of the popular Soul, and its second generation launches is parallel with the launch of the next generation regular gas Soul. And this first generation, which was launched in 2015, we've seen in this new generation EV certainly a number of improvements. You always see improvements in designs in next generation variants of models coming out, but with electrified powertrains, there really is significant changes with the advancing technology that we're seeing. We'll get into some of those improvements with respect to range and power in a little bit, but just looking at the exterior design, it mirrors very much the new Soul as well, with a couple of small cosmetic differences. Most notably, of course, would be on the front. There is no grille, there's no air intake necessary with electrified vehicles, so there is no grille. Instead, you just got a basic flat metallic front with the charge port in the front. So instead of having a gas fill-up spot in the back of the vehicle, you've got your charge port right up here at front, which is where you would plug in instead of gassing up. You have different wheels. They're low rolling resistance tires, and the wheel are more of an aerodynamic shape. They're a different tire and wheel overall for the EV. You have air intakes to obviously improve aerodynamics. There's some small other modifications on the back as well. It basically is the same, and there's some minor badging differences that show it's an electric, but unless you really were paying attention just driving by, you wouldn't know this to be the EV as opposed to the regular Soul. And I think that's one thing that people who are interested in electrified vehicles were looking for. They don't want to be driving in something necessarily that says, hey, look at me, I'm driving an electric. I mean, there are some people who want to stand out, but most people just want to have something that looks like every other car that you see on the road. In the case of the Soul EV, it does that with mirroring, for the most part, the current Soul gas version. So is an electric vehicle actually better for the environment overall compared to an internal combustion engine? Well, the answer is yes. And while there are some people who will challenge this, they'll cite things such as the battery and, think about the rare earth materials that are used to make the lithium ion batteries. And they'll also point to the fact that not all jurisdictions where you operate this in will have their grids run on renewables or cleaner energy. Well, let's address these points. The warranties, for example, on these batteries are long. They're 10 years, and that's comparable with most powertrain warranties. But an electric battery, these lithium-ion batteries, at the 10-year point, they're still viable. In fact, the warranty threshold is typically around 65% of the capacity of a full charge when new. So if this vehicle here, which is, looking in the 250 mile or 383 kilometer range in the top end, such as I'm driving, well, after 10 years, you're still looking, at 130, 140 miles or so of range, and that's still viable. But even if you choose not to use that, this battery still has many years of lifespan in a different capacity. A lot of electric car batteries now are being converted into energy storage units that you'll see utilities across North America using. And if you're going to make the complaint about lithium ion and being used as a rare earth material, well, you also then have to be critical of the fact that all of our personal electronics, such as smartphones and laptops and other things that have a memory, use the same materials in their battery as well. So you can't be selective in that regard. And as for the issue of environmental footprints based on the grid, yes, there are certainly some jurisdictions that run on maybe hydro or nuclear or renewables that you have certainly a much lower footprint. But even in states or provinces where coal or gas is the dominant form of energy for the grid, this is still a better environmental choice compared to a gas engine. Why? Efficiency. A large generating station that puts energy into the grids from coal or whatever it may be can more efficiently create energy from the raw source than can an internal combustion engine convert mechanical energy from chemical energy. It's just that the transition is better, so you'll have a lower carbon footprint by the generating of energy, even from a fossil fuel, in a large capacity than compared to something in an individualized engine such as this. The savings and the reductions can be as much as 25%. So no matter what, you're still doing better in reducing your emissions overall with an electric vehicle compared to gas. So driving an electric vehicle is different than compared to driving a gas engine, and there's a few reasons why I say that. One of them, of course, would be the fact that this is silent. It is kind of a stealth type of vehicle. In fact, I guess some people might argue that's a benefit, especially if you're someone who tends to come in later than you should, say avoiding curfew, if you know what I mean. But it can have some hazards as well. We have to be mindful of the fact, especially if you are operating this vehicle in areas where there are pedestrians or children, this will emanate a slight sound forward, so those in the area would notice and hear something, but it's not the same as gas and the engine noises that come from that. So that is one difference. Another difference in driving an electric comes in acceleration. As it is noted many times that a battery-powered vehicle does not have a torque curve that you would typically see in a gas-powered vehicle. So everything you get in terms of torque and power happens as soon as you press on the accelerator pedal. So with this upper battery trim of the Soul EV, you're getting up to 201 equivalent horsepower and about 292, I believe it is, pound-feet of torque, and that's available for you right as soon as you press. So it's quicker off the line, it's more noticeable that way, and that is definitely a difference. Braking is another way that driving an EV is different, and it comes from the fact that it uses a regenerative braking system, which is different than the typical sort of braking that you would have on a regular gas vehicle. And the regenerative system will obviously help to increase the overall driving range by returning energy from the braking system back into the battery, but it also can assist in how you drive as well. There's these basically the equivalent of paddle shifters on the wheel that increase or decrease according to your preferences the amount of regen you want. And in fact, if you have, there's a system here on the Soul EV where if you choose to brake with the paddle shifter alone and just holding it, it will actually brake on its own and even come to a complete stop, and you don't have to touch the gas pedal. And it's an interesting system way of doing it. It's almost like a one pedal driving, and other EVs have this, the Leaf and the Bolt, they all have similar systems, but it is a completely different way of operating, and it takes a bit of getting used to, but nonetheless, once you get used to it, it's kind of fun. So there's certainly an environmental benefit to driving an electric vehicle, but for those who want to make a better environmental choice, yet also want to have some justification on economics, there still is a bit of a struggle in there, because let's be honest, the list price for an EV is certainly higher than an equivalent gas. The MSRP for any of the gas variants of this Soul is certainly far less, depending on where you are in the market. I'm not going to give the exact differentiator, but it certainly is a lot higher to buy this EV, even in the lower battery trim. There are government rebates available depending upon where you live, and there are tax credits. And again, it all depends on where you are localized, but that brings the price difference down. The way to make an economic argument, though, is to not simply look at the purchase price. Rather, you have to look at the entire cost of ownership. And when you do that, the equation certainly gets a lot closer. One of the main savings, of course, comes with respect to the prices you would pay to charge up as opposed to gassing up. Depending upon where you live, again, the price differences can be rather significant. I reside in the province of Ontario here in Canada, and the price difference to charge up versus gas up over a course of a year is about 80% different. So I'd be saving, if I was, say, spending $2,000 a year on gas, the equivalent might be $400 on power. So that's a huge amount of savings that factors into the overall cost of ownership. There's also almost no maintenance that's done on electric vehicles. There is some periodic, but the scheduled intervals for maintenance on EV, according to the manufacturer's publications, is really more about periodic checks and inspections than it is. There's no oil to change, and the brakes are a much different system. So it's a whole different process, and the maintenance costs are far less as well. Let's not even forget that nowadays we're seeing insurance companies offering premium discounts rewards for driving an electrified powertrain. And in some cases, that's just because they want to do the right thing, since for insurance companies, the repair costs for EVs are still, higher than average just based upon scalability, but they're offering discounts to encourage people to make that choice and to go electric as opposed to go gas. So you've got to look more cost of ownership overall to really make the economic argument line closer as well with the environmental benefits of driving an EV such as this Soul. And the final thing to know about the 2020 Kia Soul EV are my overall impressions. When we take a look at the evolution of electric vehicles now with this, Kia Soul EV in its second generation, we're also continuing to see the casting aside of the vast majority of arguments that worked against EVs in the beginning. Not enough range, this takes care of it. Not enough interior capacity, way better. With the lower battery placement, it deals with that as well. Vehicles that look just like other vehicles, yep, it's not one of those, hey, look at me designs, it's a Soul. So when you look at those arguments, it's becoming more mainstream. In fact, this is a vehicle that basically meets the needs of the vast majority of North Americans and around the world. But overall, I really love what's happening here, and this 2020 Kia Soul EV is certainly a winner in my books overall. That's it for this review. I'm Eric Novak. Thanks for watching. There's plenty of ways for you to keep connected with me, so check out some of my social media links, suggested videos, and I'd really love it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel.